Species.
So you ever hear something so awful and stupid that it just circles around to becoming incredible and awesome?
Yeah.
I have something for you. Perineum sunbathing, or sun tanning your...
Welcome to Origin of Species. My name is Scott. I'm here along with my friend Steve. And if I remember correctly, the perineum, the last time I think I heard that word was when, one of my children was being born. Gosh, maybe I shouldn't say that.
Well,
it's pretty rough, but like, I don't know how else to.
Yeah.
It ain't your who and it ain't your ha, right?
It tain't neither of them.
And so... All right, go.
Yeah,
I'm going to let you take it over
so
now.
I haven't heard that word before, and I thought it was like some sort of technical name for your O-ring, which I thought I knew all the names for, but you are correct. It is the area between two territories. We'll just leave it at that.
Right.
And there was an article circulating that I know that I had shared with some of our friends regarding this being a new trend.
Right.
And it started with a young lady by the name of, who's an Instagram influencer. So she's good. Once you hear that.
Yeah, I figured this was somehow related to Gwyneth Paltrow, but
close. Well, I think Glennis is going to have to turn it up a notch. Yeah. So, Instagram lifestyle influencer Metaphysical Megan has a picture of herself. How do you say it again? Perineum sunning, which is basically sunning her
where the sun don't shine.
Very well put. So supposedly, and this is from the New York Post, so it's good also. If the New York Post is covering it, you know that it's going to be put together well. So they basically gathered a bunch of other dummies, including Metaphysical Megan, a gentleman who calls himself Ra of Earth.
Oh my gosh, I want to punch this
Someone by the name of Dr. Stephen T. Chang, who has a book called The Tao of Sexology, the Book of Infinite Wisdom, and I'm sure he's a real doctor too. All promoting the ability, the benefits of lighting up your O-ring with sunshine.
Okay, before you go on, I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. I can see the attraction to this in a way, like the idea of getting some sun in that area.
Yeah,
but like, I mean, how would you do it, and like where?
Well, you would do it like this picture, which is kind of
oh my gosh,
it looks like that you are gonna have someone change your diaper for you, which I guess is better than kind of going like a downward dog yoga position.
If I can describe what I just saw, it looked like a member of ABBA. I don't know if it's male or female there, lying on his or her back.
Well, these are guys.
Oh, those are definitely dudes.
Yeah.
All right, that's homoerotic. I mean,
well, I don't know if that's going to benefit what next happened in that area if it's all sunned up. That's just me. So a couple things,
especially if you get a sunburn. Ooh, worst sunburn ever.
Well, speaking of which, Josh Brolin, the actor.
I like Josh Brolin. Well, I like his acting.
Well, Josh Brolin tried this, and it completely ruined his day, according to the title of the Slate.com article.
Oh, no.
So he gave it a shot and said that, and let me translate this into PG-13. My area is crazy burned, and I was going to spend the day shopping with my family. Instead, I'm icing and using aloe and burn creams because of the severity of the pain.
I blame him for trying this.
And the rest of it is a stream of profanity. And frankly, I don't blame him. If I had that, I don't blame him for being angry and using potty language.
Why would you try this, honestly? Well, I see.
In his defense, he has enough money to go, he's got that Avengers money that he's probably sitting down and go, you know what I need to do now?
Who's he in Avengers?
He's Thanos.
Oh, Josh Brolin is
Yeah.
Thanos? Oh.
And frankly, he was in Goonies, so he should kind of get a pass to do a lot of stuff. And again, not saying this is a list on me of like once I hit a certain income threshold that it's time to
yeah.
suns out, buns out,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
It's a whole
Right.
different levels. But I would like to conclude again from the New York Post, who quotes an article from a publication called The Gloss that I've never read before and won't read again. An actress by the name of Shailene Woodley, who is described as having a holistic lifestyle, also takes
a holistic lifestyle.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't even see that. And I will just conclude with a quote from her and just kind of end it on that. Another thing I like to do is to give my vagina a little vitamin D.
Oh, come on.
So take that as you may.
Come on.
I don't know if that,
she said that.
All
right. Well,
maybe she's a fan of the double entendre. I'm not sure. I will say that I don't plan on doing this, but it gave me a great conversation with some family members a little bit groovier than I am,
right?
Who have some land, and I think they've been kind of developing an idea for a bed and breakfast. And I'm like, well, I got it for you.
Yeah.
So if you're ever in Western North Carolina and you see a place, I suggested Sunrise Farms. I thought that was a great name for it.
I like that too.
Yeah, bring your aloe and be
Hey,
ready to suns out, buns out.
when life makes you grumble, come sun your grundle. That could be their. That
That's
could be
wonderful. I was trying to
Yeah.
figure out how to work that in
I
because
couldn't think of anything good that rhymed with taint that,
Yeah.
that would work. But grundle,
Grundle's my preferred one.
I agree.
prefer Grundle.
I learned about that from your brother.
Who learned
I
it from me? Well, I actually learned that from my my college freshman roommate taught me that term.
Well, you know what? It made it all the way to me, but
Maybe it'll make it back to metaphysical Megan.
and he had a whole routine, but that he would do when he would talk about. Anyway, I'm gonna leave it there. That's fascinating, and that might be the best opening we've ever had.
Very good.
Oh, where are we? Okay, so we're gonna transition from. She did not see the vitamin D thing. Is that real?
It's in the
That's
New York
the Onion
Post.
or something. Oh my! Oh.
No, I will send you the real article.
All right. Well, we're gonna go from that to. What are we doing?
Where do we go
I heard
from
it
here?
through the grapevine.
Yeah.
I heard it through the grapevine that you sun your grundle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're going to get into this. This one has a fairly concrete origin, I think, which seems to be more and more rare when I find these things.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll get to that. But first, I'm curious what pops into your head when you first hear through the grapevine.
So when I hear that, I think of Motown songs.
Yep.
So I think the most prominent one that comes out is the Marvin Gaye version, which I think is kind of like the standard.
Yeah.
He was the standard one that people.
I think so. Like
Kinda
if you look
flagship
it up
of
on
it, yeah.
Spotify, that's probably going to be the first one that pops
Yeah.
up.
But what was cool with that, when you had mentioned we were doing these, it gave me a chance to look up some other versions. So
Yeah.
I thought of that. I thought of the Clearwater Revival version of
Yes.
it, which isn't that good. I like CCR, but that's not like one of their like kind of go-to songs when I'm listening to them.
I would agree.
But looking it up too, I had my memory jogged to a Gladys Knight in the Pips version, which when I heard it, I recognized it, and I forgot. I think she's somebody that kind of flies under the radar, doesn't get enough credit.
Absolutely.
And I'm a big Midnight Train to Georgia fan.
Oh,
but that's
great song.
almost to kind of like liking. You know, I like this artist, and I like their number one.
I like
song.
My Girl from the Temptations.
Yeah, that sort
the
of
deep
thing.
cut. Yeah.
But I also found a Smokey Robinson in the Miracles version, which I think they were the first people to record it. And you're going to talk about someone I think doesn't get enough credit anymore. Definitely Smokey Robinson as a singer and also a songwriter. And I think we're in some like weird kind of like stage where I know when you and I were younger, we were very aware of Motown.
Yeah.
And actually, I have very fond memories of being in college. One of my roommates had like the Motown box set that we listened to
nice.
often.
Was it
And
like a Time Life deal or?
No, it was like from Motown Records.
Oh,
it was
from
like
Motown Records,
Remember,
nice.
like box sets, you would pay like $120
yeah.
bucks. It was like one of those deluxe things.
Yeah.
But I think that there seems to be this kind of like eye of the storm that I don't know if Motown, like, gosh, I'm going to sound like I'm 90, but you know, the young people when they're out there listening to Young Gravy, Juuling, maybe even sunning their O-ring now.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe they need to make some Motown, bring that into it. Maybe that's the missing thing to make this new sunbathing. We got to find. I'm gonna think of some Motown songs that might be inspirational to
please
get people for that.
If you can do that, if you can somehow tie this to Motown, O-Town. There was a group called O-Town.
Yeah. Well, maybe they could come back now. Yeah. Why is Ring in our title now? I don't worry about it. Just get out there, O-Town.
O-Town. Now that I think about it, you know who was the guy behind that group was who's the big fat guy that was the Backstreet Boys guy? Lou Pearlman. Lou Pearlman started O-Town. So yeah, so if you had to rank them, it's a classic song.
Yeah.
And I didn't know about the Gladys Knight one until today, and it's like almost immediately shot to the top of my favorites. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Gladys Knight is awesome, and somehow you talk about there being like a blind spot with young people in Motown.
Mm-hmm.
I would agree, but I feel like Motown is just the stuff that came out of that era, and those artists are kind of beyond reproach. It's like you have to like that music.
Yeah.
If you don't like it, you don't like music. That's how I feel about it. Because you can tell me you don't like, I don't know, Journey or something, and I'm not going to have a problem with that. But if you tell me you don't like Gladys Knight or Smokey Robinson, then you probably don't like music. So, well, those are all good. But I will tell you that for me, when I heard it through the grapevine, I immediately think of the California Raisins. So for those of you that don't know about the California Raisins, they were an anthropomorphized group of raisins, and they came out in 1986 for Sun-Maid on behalf of the California Raisin Advisory Board. So let that sink in. There's something called the California Raisin Advisory Board. Raisins kind of suck. I don't know about you. When I was a kid, it was sort of like mandatory to be in your lunchbox. And it's just,
it was like, it wasn't as bad as having real fruit, but it certainly wasn't as good as having candy.
Right. It wasn't a substitute for candy. Yeah. So raisins, I think, have had their day in the sun. See what I did there? But speaking of sunning your perineum, the California raisins.
Yeah, I'm envisioning right now really bad claymation commercial.
Yeah,
that could.
So more on the California raisins. The California raisins were an absolute phenomenon. And Steve, you can vouch for this.
Yeah.
Did you know that they released 4 studio albums?
I did not know that.
Between 1987 and 1988. They landed, I heard it through the grapevine, their version of it landed on the Billboard Hot 100. So I knew this song before I'd ever heard the Marvin Gaye song. Because back then, I don't know, kids today, I'm just going to say it, don't understand the struggle of getting some sort of like entertainment from your TV, because there were like not as many channels, nothing was on demand. Cartoons in some way, commercials in some way were like some of the best entertainment you even got as a kid. Like seeing the California Raisins commercial was freaking awesome. And that song, of course, it's a great song. I thought the California Raisins came up with it.
Right.
So the first time I heard that song, it was from the freaking California Raisins. So I'm going to ask you in a second about sort of your relationship with the California Raisins, because you have to have had one if you grew up in the 80s. But I'll tell you, I actually had one of the figurines.
I did too.
Okay. I had the guy, I think he had sunglasses and a saxophone, and he was feeling it. And the other thing that I remember is being in 5th grade and hearing a kid sing the song, and I had to correct them and tell him that it wasn't, the lyrics weren't, I heard it through the grapevine, no longer would you be mine. It was, I heard it through the grapevine, raised in the California sunshine.
Yeah.
And I was pretty sure that was the real lyrics. And I still feel embarrassed about that to this
I think
day.
you should be confident in that. I think it also shows the power of advertising.
Oh my gosh.
So you bring up a good point of back in the 80s. I think there was a time where children's television kind of segued into especially just being advertising for children.
Right.
So you would see, you'd watch G.I. Joe, which essentially was a commercial for G.I. Joe toys.
Yeah.
And all the other commercials were pretty much the same, which is why we had there's some legislative changes that went through that you would have the knowing is half the battle stuff from G.I. Joe to try to
try to
redeem
it.
Yeah, you'd watch 20 minutes of commercial and then the last 2 minutes would tell you if you see, if your house is on fire.
Right. Or like shipwreck is going to tell you if there's a downed power line.
That's it. That is actually the one I was thinking about.
That's the definitive one. Sorry if I stole your thunder there. But.
No, but I didn't know if that would resonate as much. But that's, you needed a guy that was always dressed in a sailor outfit, no matter what he was doing, to tell you to stay away from power. And I like how those just like showed up outside. Like kids are inside, like setting things on fire. And then, Duke just happens to be there. Cruising through their neighborhood.
Duke. I don't know if they've done this on like SNL, but that would be a great sketch of like just real life, like shipwreck. And then who is the bald
Gung Ho?
Gung Ho, was that his name? Just outside watching the kids going, "Hey kids,
Mom, there's a Marine and a sailor sitting outside the kitchen window."
Right. Don't touch that down power line, son.
Yeah.
Oh. We were going to play jump rope with it. So, do you remember which California raisin you had, or did you have more than one? Or
I think I had several, and I want to say they were related to a promotion at the Hardee's.
It was Hardee's. Yep.
Okay. Now, was it me, or was Hardee's like the pioneer of fast food breakfast?
I think McDonald's had it,
right?
But it wasn't. I mean, Hardee's took it to a new level.
McDonald's did the McDonald's thing, where it was, if you got an Egg McMuffin anywhere in the country, is exactly the same. But Hardee's actually had, I think they also promoted like kind of having like freshly made biscuits or something.
And they were really good. And frankly, I haven't had it in a while just because there's not one like convenient. But
they went from advertising the California raisins to now they just basically brag how unhealthy their food is. They have the giant bag.
Oh, you're right.
That drops from the sky and flops, and like grease comes out of it, and they kind of.
It must work well because they did that whole thing with like, let's get Paris Hilton to like eat a burger at Close Up or some other.
I remember that.
Some other model, yeah.
And I remember thinking too that I was glad I was out of whatever demographic they were targeting.
Yeah,
like watching. I don't know if I'd use the term attractive for her, but watching what's supposed to be an attractive young woman eating a vulgar cheeseburger.
Yeah, it's really
that's hot, and I want to go buy some.
Right, doesn't make me want to eat it, but it's kind of like watching Mountain Dew commercials, and you're like, oh, I'm not in the demo for this.
Yeah.
Kind of like, oh, speaking of entertaining commercials, Sunny D commercials, but there were a lot of them. So anyway, I can't. That's out of the way now. There's nothing else about the California raisins, but the phenomenon of the California raisins is pretty funny and weird. Well, it's so 80s. Mm-hmm.
I like, what was the name of the board again?
Yeah, the California Raisin Advisory Board.
It's a very official sounding, and I'm intimidated by that name. Like if you get called before them.
Well, it's CRAB for short. You get called before CRAB, the California Raisin Advisory Board. You're not going to like where things are going to go because they're going to tell you, you're not doing enough to promote California raisins. Oh, but so this guy came up with the idea. Matter of fact, I did remember reading this, and I'll leave it at this with California raisins. The California Raisins Advisory Board was having a meeting, and this guy, whose name I don't remember, shockingly, said, "Hey, we've done everything to promote these raisins except have claymation raisins singing I Heard It Through the Grapevine." And there was a guy in there that was like, "Eureka!" And they did it. And they hit the Billboard Hot 100.
Yeah.
They won an Emmy. They won an Emmy. Hold on. It's either an Emmy or a Grammy. Hold on. They won an Emmy. It wasn't a Grammy. The freaking California Raisins won an Emmy. Look it up. So, spend some time today, watch those videos. They're hilarious. So why do we say, I heard it through the grapevine? When you hear that, Steve, I mean, do you use it? What do you think it means?
You know what? I want to say I don't use it. Yep. But now that I'm thinking about it, it conveys, you've heard gossip, you've heard things. Yeah. And I think that I've probably said that because it's a way you don't want to say, "Hey, Todd, I heard gossip." You have to find another way to kind of like cover it up a little bit, or I guess gently enter the conversation.
So a little birdie told me.
Yeah, that was the other one.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
I am naturally tend toward gossip. I don't like it about myself, but I am that guy that, I've tried to get better as I got older, but I've definitely dropped So, heard through the grapevine, which is like, I'm not going to reveal my source of this gossip.
Right.
So, according to phrases.org.uk, they define it as an indication that a piece of information was obtained via an informal contact. So, a little birdie heard it through the grapevine.
Right.
But why a grapevine? So, this one comes from the original saying, which is a grapevine telegraph. So, I got a grapevine telegraph.
Okay.
There are variants of that. In Australia, there's a bush telegraph. And then in England, there's a jungle telegraph. But they all came after the grapevine telegraph.
Okay.
And by the way, I just thought of this. You ever use the phrase of, I don't want to telegraph this? What do you mean by that when you say that? Think about that for a second. I don't want to give away, I don't want to be real clear with what I'm saying. I want to kind of be sneaky or whatever. I want to telegraph this.
I say that. I say that one probably more than that. And I'm fairly certain I've never had any experience with a telegraph.
Right. And the reason for this, so the telegraph was a pretty big deal when it came out. What a telegraph allowed you to do was, tap a message and get it straight to the source. As the crow flies sort of kind of deal, right? And before that, to get a message to somebody kind of would go here, would go there, would sort of swirl around, sort of like the tendrils of a grapevine. It wasn't a straightforward deal.
Okay.
So once the telegraph came out in the 1840s, it sort of this heard it through the grapevine was a way of saying, hey, I didn't get it directly from the source like a telegraph. I got it through these other channels. So there's some more to say about this one. So the telegraph was invented by Samuel Morse, as you would know from Morse code. And there was a line open between Washington and Baltimore on May 24th of 1844. And then this expanded in the following decade. And by the way, now I'm going to worldwide words with this stuff. So this obviously was a huge improvement in the speed of communication. It was a big deal. And it also got you more accurate messages, unless you were on a budget and you were from the town of, I literally just thought of this and I can't believe I'm just
Santa Poco.
Santa Poco, yeah.
Hold on, let me. We got to get that. We got to get
Yeah,
three.
no, well, you kind of did. You kind of passed the test by knowing that without looking it up. So I'd say we roll with it. So in the town of Santa Poco, when they were looking for the heroes to fight El Guapo, the three amigos used a telegraph, but they were on a budget.
Yeah. Well, actually, they were on the receiving end of someone who didn't understand the word infamous.
The telegraph operator.
Yeah. Didn't realize who he was dealing with.
Was
consolidate many negative things about someone.
Right. And so he said infamous, so he was right.
Yeah.
But
he was
then the amigos took infamous to me. He's infamous. He's more than famous. This El Guapo guy. A pretty big deal. But anyway, we digress. It's a great movie.
Well, I will digress one more time.
Please do.
That is a movie that somehow slipped under my radar, and you were a champion for it. And it was our official winter movie last year of being stuck in a house.
I think we have sort of gone back and forth with movies. So I'm glad that you have enjoyed that. If you haven't seen The Three Amigos, it is really good and really underrated. Yeah. I don't know why it's not out there more. It's Steve Martin, Chevy Chase, and Martin Short at the peak of their powers.
I feel like if we have to use term underrated, I think a director who does not get enough credit is the director John Landis from that movie.
Yes.
So we are tangenting. We're talking about everything except idioms today. But I'm going to throw out a couple real quick.
Yeah, please.
Animal House, Blues Brothers, American Werewolf in London, Spies Like Us, Coming to America.
I would agree that he is. Like when you said John Landis, the only one I kind of knew and I thought of was Animal House. You
could retire off that.
Yeah.
But a lot of underrated films.
So getting back to Telegraph, so this weirdly, this whole, I heard it through the grapevine, was all prompted by sort of the just the contrast between hearing something directly from a telegraph. You had the grapevine telegraph. Now there are some other connotations here that I want to talk about a little bit. So the first recorded usage was in the Random House Historical Dictionary of American Slang in 1852. And it included the sentence, by the grapevine telegraph line, we have received the following. It as far as where this came from, there are some other sort of angles. One comes from the 1901 autobiography of Booker T. Washington, when he talks about slaves in the South would keep up to date on current events by, quote, what was termed the Grapevine telegraph. And this was his quote. He said, often the slaves got knowledge of the result of great battles before the white people received it. So essentially, it was used around Civil War time. Also, it's ever since the telegraph came about, it's been this contrast to the telegraph of the Grapevine telegraph. At some point, people kind of forgot what a telegraph was, and I heard it through the grapevine instead of I heard it through the Grapevine telegraph.
Right. And I think it also points out too, and one of the reasons it resonates is there's different situations in life where there's the official outlet that you're supposed to get news from, but you find oftentimes you might get the real news through the grapevine. There's the unofficial.
Yeah. And like a lot of these, this wouldn't be an enduring idiom if there wasn't a need for it. You need this.
Right.
You need to have a way to tell somebody, I got this unofficially, but you don't want to say,
yeah,
I got this unofficially, and please don't tell anyone, and I don't source it back to this person, and da-da-da-da-da. You can just say, I heard it through the grapevine. Now, one twist, I started this by saying this is a pretty concrete etymology here. I will say that I also read a couple of places that seem to believe that this one originated from the telegraph system itself. And what they're saying is that the system had all this telegraph wire that had to be installed all over the place. And it was several meters above the ground. There were telephone poles, basically, that were holding these things. And people thought that the wires and poles and looked like vines. And so that became known as the grapevine. So this one kind of turns it on its head and says, no, they literally meant when you heard it through the grapevine, you're hearing it from the telegraph.
Right.
Maybe. I tend to think that's not true. I tend to think it's, because then that wouldn't even make sense, because it'd be like, I heard it. You would just say, I heard it through the telegraph.
Right.
Why would you need to say the grapevine telegraph? So doesn't make sense to me. All right. So another one, as you can tell, there's a theme here of kind of gossip, secrets. We're going back to, let me put it this way. This one, when I first Googled it, I noticed that the number one result in the predictive text when you Google let the, number one is let the bodies hit the floor.
Really?
That's number one. And number three was let the good times roll.
Oh, no, let the dogs out?
No, if I said who let, it would have probably been that. So let the bodies hit the floor, which is a song I'm conflicted about because it kind of rocks, but it's also kind of,
it's kind of like, no one's impressed that you like that song. No one goes, you know what? I wasn't sure if he should get that promotion, but he's a big, what was the,
I don't know.
It wasn't, I was going to say Disturb.
It's not, it's like the other one. I don't know. Let the bodies hit the floor by that guy, but, or by that band that's not Disturbed.
Yeah.
But then Let the Good Times Roll is a really good song by the Cars. I would say it's not in my top 5, but it's a great Cars song.
Yeah.
But right in the middle of those two is the one I was looking for, which was Let the Cat Out of the Bag.
Let the cat out of the bag.
So with all this dog talk that you got, Mindy, I feel like we needed to bring it back to cats. And this is one we haven't done.
Yeah. And by the way, I think I've still been fairly honest about the appeal of cats. Yeah. And the fact that they're not desperate and clingy and would murder us if they had the chance.
Oh, yeah. They absolutely would. I also like this one because it gives us another chance to talk about the cat of nine tails. People love talking about the cat of nine tails. So I'll get to what the main theory on this one is. There's a couple of theories for Let the Cat Out of the Bag. Part of it is just sort of like some of the ones we've done before, like Bull in a China Shop, things like that. It's kind of, you don't need a big story about it. It kind of is what it is.
Right.
It's nice to know sort of the history of it. And Let the Cat Out of the Bag is sort of that way too. I mean, it's a good image of something that you didn't want to be exposed. All of a sudden it's like, boom, that cat's going to dart out of that bag and you can't get it back in.
A cat is not going to subtly get out of a bag.
Exactly.
It is going to make its presence known as it emerges.
That's right. So people love, like when you look up where did this come from, people can't help themselves but talk about cat of nine tails, but they're like the Navy, the English Navy, they would whip those men with cats of nine tails. And it's like, okay, what does that have to do with letting the cat out of the bag? And somebody tried to tie it to the fact that, oh well, if you gave up one of the secrets, then you would get hit with the cat of nine tails. It's like, no, you just want to talk about the cat of nine tails.
Yeah, and maybe one of the secrets would be what happens to you after you get some sunshine in your undercarriage. The many medical benefits that have been hidden by the man.
Yes, exactly. And so, anyway, I don't know. Maybe I'm on the wrong forums, but those come up a lot. The main theory on this one is that it has to do with, back in the proverbial day, getting sold a bag that had a piglet, supposed to have a piglet in it, but last second they'd swap it with a cat. So you'd end up with something you didn't pay for. So, I don't think that, so let's talk about that one.
Yeah.
I think it's sort of, it's some suspension of disbelief, as we've covered, has to happen here to think that you would be handed a bag with a cat in it.
Right.
And think that it's a piglet.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't think that's something that specifically happened. I think this calls back to another sort of adage or idiom called a pig in a poke.
Correct.
And that is, have you heard of this one?
I have. That nearly came up on our dead animal one. It didn't make the cut, but I'm glad now it's back.
Yeah. So pig in a poke is not one I'd heard about. And it does sound like, anyway, there's a lot of things we could say. Yeah. But it's a good one, and it goes all the way back to 1955. There's an Old English little stanza here that says, "I will never buy the pig in a poke. There's many a foul pig in a fair cloak." So the moral of the story is going all the way back to the 16th century. And then all the way to the 19th century, they explained this as a confidence trick where a farmer would substitute a cat for a suckling pig. It's more so of a, what's the word I'm looking for? What do you call it? Like a parable, not a parable, but like a fable. It's like it's basically like a warning.
Yeah.
It's not like people are actually doing this, but it's like, hey, check your bag before you leave because you'll get ripped off. Kind of like what happens at Wendy's when you go for a Coke Zero.
Yeah.
You get a Diet Coke, or you go to Taco Bell and you can't tell the difference anyway, but you're probably not going to get what you ordered.
And that's because everyone is drunk in that scenario.
Yeah, exactly. But I have got, in my older age, I have gotten much bolder when I go through now if it's Chick-fil-A, I just go. Right. But if it's, just to bring it back to fast food, but if I do stop by a Wendy's or anywhere else, I will take my time. Yeah. And it used to be, self-conscious and I drive away, but then I have to be the guy walking in with the bag like, hey, what I ordered, I got a pig and a poke here. Yeah. By the way, a poke just means like a bag.
Right.
So I think it comes from that one. So if you look at the potential explanations, one is something to do with the cat of nine tails. I just reject that out of hand.
People just like talking about it because it's weird and it's violent.
Exactly. The whole pig and a poke derivation is much more plausible, but really we couldn't find any, phrases.org.uk couldn't find a direct link to the letting the cat out of the bag, but it's pretty close. There are versions of this phrase that exist in Dutch, which is "een kat in die zak kopen," and in German, which I love, "die Katz am Sack kaufen." It looks like "die Katz I'm Sack kaufen." It just sounds harsh.
It sounds very German though.
Yeah, and they both loosely translate to buy a cat in a bag, which means to buy false goods.
I'm very interested by this whole cat as a ruse for another animal, because we both rejected that outright as such men of the fields and farms that we are of, all our experience with animals. But when's the last time you bought a piglet in a bag?
That's a fair point.
But
it could sound similar, but I mean,
who knows? Maybe that's a side business we take on after this, after we are allowed to sell pills to help you on the other part of your undercarriage.
That's right. So the first documented use of the phrase, just to try to pull this together, is in the sense of revealing a secret, comes from a book review in a 1760 issue of the London Magazine.
The London Magazine, yes.
Yeah. So letting the cat out of the bag, if you think about what we've talked about so far, none of it really has to do with keeping a secret. I guess kind of, if you bought a piglet or you thought you did, the cat came out, the secret has been spoiled. But the first time it's used is in this 1760 issue of London Magazine, where the reviewer, when they're reviewing the book, says, quote, "We could have wished that the author had not let the cat out of the bag." Yeah, so sort of like M. Night Shyamalan, who sort of spoils his own movies sometimes, like right before he should. And that's all we really know. We don't know why they started calling it that. I'm going to go with the livestock fraud if I had to make a guess. And that's it. That's all I got for cat out of the bag.
Well, I feel like I've learned a lot from this. And I'm going to try to find a way to acquire a piglet or a cat and then try to confuse someone or vice versa.
I think
you
just
confuse myself.
I think it would actually be fun to do if you could carve out the time. All right. Speaking of time, I think we have time for one more. So I'm going to just wrap this up with spill the beans.
Spill the beans.
Very similar to letting the cat out of the bag. But this one, again, has one that sounds like it could be true. So let's go ahead and talk about that. So I thought I'd bring beans back in just because the last time we talked about beans was cool beans. I got a little angry talking about cool beans, and once again it does. I've been tortured ever since that episode with people.
And I know in real life you're a very pro bean person, so I think this is good. You make a mean chili.
I am pro beans. Yeah. And one of the things we talked about in cool beans is how beans has been used in all sorts of ways, idiomatically or metaphorically throughout the years. One of those is spill the beans, and it seems pretty obvious. Well, to me, what it means, which is like, you let out a secret and it spills and you can't get it back. Have you had any other thoughts about what spill the beans could mean, Steve?
No, I think it's something that when a cat gets out of the bag, it's pretty obvious and tough to get back in. And if you spill a bunch of beans, same situation. You spill beans, it's not easy to scoop up and get that back in.
That's right. And that's exactly how I would think about it. And but I brought this because it's a little bit more than that. So when I looked it up, multiple websites with authority were saying that it went back to ancient Greece, where people cast secret votes by putting white or black beans in a jar.
Okay.
A white bean indicated a positive vote and a black bean was negative. If someone accidentally or deliberately knocked over the jar, the beans would pour out and the secret would be revealed early. So they would have spilled the beans. And when I first read that, and of course it reminds me of black ball, which we've done as well, very similar. It seemed a little bit too, I don't know. It didn't. It
seems too convenient.
It does. It seems too convenient. You know why? Because whenever you're like, you start dropping ancient Greece. One of the things about ancient Greece is ain't a whole lot of stuff recorded that you can actually. I mean, there's Herodotus, but there's not. I don't know how you're going to prove this.
Yeah, I'm not really thinking of beans in the Greeks either. Like if it was like flip the feta.
Flip the feta.
Yeah.
Let's use that.
Spill the olive, something more related.
That's right. But the Oxford English Dictionary in 1574 gives a quote for the word spill. So let's just focus on spill, which means to divulge or let out. So more so than just, I spill my drink, there is that connotation all the way back in the 1500s, which means you've divulged something. So beans are such a versatile thing over the years. I mean, you can use dry beans as like a kid can play with beans as a toy. You eat them. They've really been a staple of American life for forever. So spilling the beans is sort of just an outgrowth of that. But we actually have some things from 1902 that tie it back to horse racing, of course. So in 1902, it was used as causing an upset. So E.J. Arnold has a quote where, and I won't read the whole quote, but basically it's talking about this horse. It says he was set down by this other horse. He said he ran around and over her so that she was shut in, cut off, so the beans were spilled. And then it talks about for about 10 to 15 years, spilling the beans didn't mean letting out a secret. It meant causing an upset, and they said the closest idiom to that would be upsetting the apple cart, which is something that's come up a bunch of times. We talked about it when we talked about Apple in My Eye. We talked about it when we talked about Paint the Town Red. Basically, there was a stable situation that's now unstable. So upsetting the apple cart, spilling the beans kind of were used synonymously. The upset thing is used again in 1907 in the Democrat Sentinel, used in baseball. And they talk about the beans were spilled in the 8th inning when Jones, who played sensational ball during the game, made an error, and basically talks about how they went on to lose this game. So in the Tacoma Times in March of 1913, they defined spilling the beans like this. It said, if we descend to the vulgar language of the street, spilling the beans has much the same meaning as upsetting the apple cart. Being considered slang, the fact that it was slang might explain why it took some time to become mainstream, because remember, slang used to kind of be...
Yeah. What's the word of the street?
Yeah. It's kind of weird to think about. It's not like that anymore. We just say whatever we want. But back then, I mean, you kind of were differentiated if you weren't using slang. Yeah. Well, as someone who has a dog who eats scrimp... I mean,
and has been in prison, and it's pretty obvious that we've fought our way up from the streets to get where we are today. Exactly. I can empathize with that.
Yes. So anyway, just to wrap it up, what is spill the beans? Where did it come from? We're not really sure. It's been used different ways throughout time, but it's something that we'll probably keep using, and maybe in 50 years it'll mean something else.
Yeah, and in the same way that we've used the sun throughout history, we're still finding new uses for it, especially Josh Brolin. This is Steve from Origin of Species. Thank you very much for listening to our show. Once you're done bathing your back door in sunlight, we would greatly appreciate you leaving a positive review and a 5-star rating for us on Apple Podcasts. Your feedback and support helps us reach out to other great listeners like you. Thank you again for listening to Origin of Species, and always remember, sunscreen your grundle. Another thing I like to do is to give my vagina a little vitamin D